Well, hello again. Glad to see you back. Boy, that last video posting sure got a bunch of comments about me saying filter capacitor. Well, excuse me. Okay? Anyway, we'll get to that in a second. I just got done hand sanding the inside of this thing all the way around. We're going to go ahead and vacuum up all the dust. I took out each of the screws and sanded around them and everything. It looks pretty darn good right now, and I think we might have a solution to these metal plates. I have to still think about that and work on that, but right now we have everything hand sanded. And you know, when I went through shop class in high school, we didn't have all those power sanders and vibrating sanders and disc sanders and belt sanders and all that crap. Our school couldn't afford it. So our shop teacher, whose name was Mr. Hendrian, by the way, he just died recently, 91 years old. And it wasn't until then that I found out in his obituary that he was a fighter pilot during the Second World War and had won 10 air medals. No one knew that. He just never mentioned World War II and the fact that he was a pilot. Anyway, this thing here, I'm going to go ahead and vacuum it up with a vacuum cleaner. I'm going to wipe it all down, clean it all up. I went ahead and took out these parts here to make it easier to go ahead and clean also. They were held in. This side was held in with this big nut right here. Look at that nut. Look how everything on this jukebox has been touched at one time or another. It's incredible. Look how boogered up that nut is right there. If I can get it to focus. Come on, there we go. Look how boogered up that nut is. I wonder how many times that thing's been taken off and put on. Look at that. Wow. Pliers. Even in the old days they used pliers. Over here was a latch that it was just one of these key latch things. You know, I decided to just go ahead and just remove it. It comes out from the outside, and when I spray, I'll stick something up in there, you know, but if I get a little spray paint up in here, that's okay. But I wanted to be able to get up in this area here. So anyway, that's that for now, and I need to get her cleaned up. Let me do that. I started this sanding project last night just before dark, and then when it finally got dark, I said, that's it, I'm tired, I'm going in the house. I'd been messing with it all day. And in the process of sanding it, I found again yet another lifted piece of a plywood layer. So I just stuck some glue underneath it on both sides and let it dry all night. And today I'm going to show you, I'm just going to go ahead and take the iron now and iron that flat. So I also found a crack in the wood up here today when I finished up the sanding, so I've got that clamped. It was split right down the other side. It was bound down about maybe 1.5 inches. We packed it with glue. We got the clamp sitting in there, so that's going to take, you know, until later on this afternoon to dry. Let's see how warm our iron is here. Again, I've got it set a little bit past polyester. Let's go ahead and see if it'll iron. It should be hot enough by now. If not, I'll just apply more heat to it. You know, just lay your glue underneath, let it dry completely. Make sure that the top and the bottom has the glue. Then just go ahead and press your iron on it. This works great for veneer and plywood layers. It works great. The glue just fuses together. Now look at there. Nice and flat, completely glued together. Great job. Works great. The entire area now has been sanded a second time. I hit a bunch of areas that needed to be touched up, you know. And it's been wiped down, ready to go. All I have to do is wait for that clamp area to dry. And what I'm going to do is put some more of our wood conditioner on there. Our pre-stained wood conditioner is what it's called. Just a sealer, as I said before. But before we do that, we got a few suggestions that I liked from our good subscribers. And I'm pretty sure I now know what I'm going to do with these metal plates. But in order to do it, I like to get the plates off, and they're glued to the cabinet. Now, Sparky, 1958, he's been you know, interjecting time to time some of his good knowledge. And he said all you got to do is hit this with a, you know, a hair dryer, and it'll soften the glue, and the thing will come right off. Well, we're fixing to put that to the test. I don't have a hair dryer, but I do have a heat gun, and I can keep it on low and keep it away from the metal so it doesn't get too hot. And if I can get that glue to soften up all the way down and get that plate out, then I shall do the same to this one over here. It'll be a whole lot easier for me to work on out of the cabinet than in the cabinet. So let's see what we can do with that. Let me see here. Where's the low on this? Low is in the middle. I'm going to go ahead and heat that and see if I can't get it off. I sure hope so, because I've got really big plans for that, for these metal things. But old Sparky was right. Once I heated it, the old glue came right loose. Look at there. I had to use a putty knife, you know, to get between the metal and the wood. And just gently, ever so gently, just took it like that and worked my way in as far as it would go, all the way down, all the way down. I didn't bend the metal out or anything. I just kind of worked it in, worked it in, worked it in, going through the glue until I got to the bottom. And then all I had to do is grab the top with a wet rag, because it was pretty hot, the metal was, and just give it a tug, and the whole thing came right off. And I've been able to get most of the old glue off too. I don't think I'm going to be able to get it all off. That's some pretty tough glue they had on there. I heated the, what I did was I heated the edge of the blade of the putty knife with the heat gun. Got it real hot, and then I just kind of pushed it on through the glue and was able to remove a lot of it. So I think we're good to go on that. The big thing I was concerned about now that it's cooled down is how hard is it going to be to get it back in, because that's a pretty tight squeeze along that edge right there. But I had nothing to worry about, because once you get it up there, she goes right on in there with no problem at all, nice and even all the way down. Look at that. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. All right, now we'll do the same thing to the other one. But meanwhile, before I get to that, let's take a look at that Select-O-Matic Mechanism again. In our last video, we took a look at these two capacitors right here, motor capacitors, and I call them filter caps. And of course, here comes the I gotcha crowd, you know. They go down and they do connect to the motor. They're motor run caps. They keep the torque on the motor, and several of you jumped in there with comments. Let me tell you how it is, guys. You got to understand how it works on this end of the video. Before you even got close to putting down a comment, Brendan was already on the blower, the email blower, telling me all about these capacitors and how I made a mistake. Okay, and you have to understand, he's way ahead of the power curve and way ahead of the crowd. Okay, let me show you what he wrote. Well, I feel like scum. All right, we now know what this is, okay? They are non-polarized capacitors. However, I want to show you something. This is very important. The symbol for a capacitor, sometimes you'll see on schematics, they look like this. They'll be, it'll be like this one side. Let me zoom in here. Let me let you see what it is for all you new folks. And it will be like this, and then there'll be a lead coming out of both ends. Now this would be the positive end, and this would be the negative, okay? Which would indicate a polarized electrolytic capacitor. Well, that's what we have here. We have, on those capacitors, if you'll look, you'll see the top line is curved, and the bottom line is straight on both of them. Well, they're not marked positive and negative, but you'll see that sometimes in schematics. You'll just see this right here. You just see the curve and the line. That is an error. That is not correct. These are non-polarized capacitors, so there is no positive and negative. We will be replacing those, okay? What should have been written there on that schematic should have been straight lines, okay, like so, like that. But it wasn't done. So, I looked at that and I said, that's got to be an electrolytic capacitor because of the way it's drawn. And if you look over here, that is C655 and C656. If you look over here, it just says microfarad capacitor, motor capacitors. You know, I just kind of assumed, you know, this is an old piece of gear. I didn't know. I thought maybe they used electrolytic capacitors for it in this particular usage, you know. Now, one more thing that we covered, Brendan contacted me about. He said that when this relay opens and closes, you get basically, in layman's terms, you get voltage blowback. You know, when the relay goes open and close, you get voltage blowback through the circuit. Sometimes the circuit's designed to take it. Other times they suppress it using a diode and a small resistor. And that keeps the, in your car, you have the same thing when the coil on your car charges up and collapses. Whenever the field collapses, that's what causes the blowback, the voltage blowback. And if you don't suppress it, you can get arcs on that on the contacts, or in your car, or the solenoid, the trip solenoid, or whatever solenoid it's attached to. So this suppresses it, basically keeps that from happening. That's why they have it termed smoothing rectifier. Well, you know, I kind of thought maybe, possibly, somehow that's what I had said last time. Didn't I mention arcs? Well, everything has been taped off and ready to go. Now that I have those two silver sides off, I still probably need to do a little sanding down here on the glue, but that will be behind the metal plate. And so what we're going to do is what I usually do. We're going to go ahead and put this pre-stained wood conditioner on here. It's just a conditioner, a sealer, just like always. It's going to seal the entire thing. Then we'll come back and we'll go ahead and paint this thing. And in the next segment, I'll show you what we're going to paint this with. The sealer has been applied and it has been wiped down, so all we can do now is let it dry overnight. I want it to dry completely before we start painting tomorrow. About a month and a half ago, I guess it was, maybe a little longer, I asked in one of the videos if anybody knew what this color was, this blue. Well, Sparky, 1958, he jumped up and he says, John, I think this is what he said. I haven't gone back and checked the video, but I think he said it was a satin blue from 1992, a Ford color, car color, metallic. So I went on down to the paint store a few days later and I told him that information, and I took one of the paint chips from one of the pieces of the wood that was back here in the corner, all those little chunks and everything. I took that with me, with the color on it, and he found that color that Sparky mentioned, and I matched the chip up to the color, and it was not as close as I thought it was going to be. It looked good on the internet when I held it up to my computer screen, you know, but down there in their little book where they have all those little, you know, those little color samples and everything, it didn't look as good. It was nice and light like it's supposed to be, but it just wasn't close enough for me. So he dug out another book, and we went through the first book and couldn't come up with anything better than that. Went through the second book, and we came up with a color that was pretty darn close, I thought. And he found it in what he called Spectromaster. The Spectromaster blue is called BM114. And I said, yeah, this is pretty darn good. Give me a quart of this stuff. We're going to go ahead and put that on with a foam rubber brush and whatnot. So he whipped it up and I left. It was like 30 bucks for this thing. I didn't mind paying it. You know, when I get what I want, I don't mind paying. And of course, I would not have paid 60 or 70 bucks, but 30 was a good price, I thought. Well, just a few days ago, I got thinking about this. Now that I was sanding the inside and preparing it for painting and all that other stuff, I said, you know, that may not be the way to go as far as paint, because I have a lot of nooks and crannies here, and I don't want to be jamming my foam rubber brush up in there, you know, getting runs everywhere. So I took the can back down to the paint store, the auto paint store, and I said, hey, look, you know, I might have made a mistake. What I want you to do, can you take some paint? I want this can kept. I don't want to give it back to you. Can you take some paint from this can and put it in a spray can? The guy said, sure we can. I said, you can? He said, yeah. I said, how much is that going to cost me? He said, $5. I said, make it happen, young feller. Well, they went ahead and took 5 ounces of paint out of this can and put it in that can for me. So now I have both types, okay? The paint on, the brush on, and the spray. And for $5 it was worth, you know, going down and talking to the fella. And as a matter of fact, I asked him, I said, how do you put the paint in those cans? They said, you know, what do you pressurize them with and everything? He said they come already pressurized. We buy them and they're already pressurized. All we have to do is put 5 ounces of paint into the top and we're done. I said, well, that's pretty cool. He said, now we can't do water-based stuff like that. It has to be some kind of oil-type base paint, that sort of thing, lacquer-based and all that. I said, well, that's great. So, the color we have chosen is BM, or I have chosen for all of you on your behalf, I have selected BM114 out of the SpectraMaster car book, okay? And tomorrow we will spray this with this can, this entire area that's been masked off. I know you can't wait. I just know you can't wait. Well, one more time, back to the Select-O-Matic Mechanism, and then we'll call this video a wrap. Much of what you see on these videos that I put up have been long in preparation. It's not something that we, Brendan and I, just jump on and, you know, let's do it today, let's do it today, let's do it. No. Some of this stuff goes back months, getting everything ready for the big day when we show it to you. Now, case in point, our little non-polarized electrolytic motor run capacitor, okay? Way back when, the early part of the year, Brendan said, John, you know, you're going to have a need to replace this right here. And he said, well, you can buy a new one. It'll probably cost you a fortune. And they do. They're $35 for this plus shipping. Forget that, you know. He said, or what you can do is restuff it when the time comes. I said, okay. Now keep in mind, I'm working tearing apart the cabinet at this time. You know, he's working on the book, going over all the schematics and reading all kinds of stuff and everything. And so while I'm working my butt off, he's just sitting there enjoying the retired life. You know how it is with some guys. You gotta watch these guys. Some of them, I swear, especially Brendan, you know. Anyway, he said, get your buns on eBay and order the following, order a capacitor from the following link for each of these. He said what they are is ceiling fan caps. And he said when the time comes, you'll have the capacitor. If I can get it out of the stupid bag. There we go. Okay. Ceiling fan capacitors, okay? Now this one here is a 1.5 rated at 450 volts. It'll work perfectly. This one here is a 1 microfarad, also rated at, I believe it's a 450 volts. Let me see. Yep, this is a 1 microfarad, plus or minus 5%, rated at 450 volts also. So what we're going to do now, they do have little, kind of little mounting plastic things on them. I'm going to cut that off of our motor, so I'm going to whack that off and smooth it up real good. And then same with this one here. And what we'll do is put them side by side like this, and I think they'll fit up inside that can. Well, we're going to find out. And if they don't fit up inside that can, then I'm going to have to come up with some kind of a terminal strip rig, which shouldn't be too difficult. I can actually mount it right on here. Once this is replaced, I can put a, you know, a isolated terminal strip on there with that screw through there, and it'll stick up there real nice. I can mount the diode on there that takes the place of the selenium rectifier, and I can also put these two capacitors there. So you see, we're way ahead of everything. May not look like it because I kind of dribble things along here, wanting to know what's going on way before everybody else does. And except for this here, you know, I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to this when he was telling me. As far as I was concerned, it was like, oh, okay, we got to replace it. We got the replacements here. We're good to go. Keep tearing apart the cabinet. That's the way it was with me. So he does his part, I do my part, and together, this thing is beginning to finally come into fruition. Okay. Until next time, when we paint the cabinet. This is John.